The boardroom fell silent except for the muffled snickers echoing off the mahogany walls. 22-year-old Marcus Thompson stood at the head of the polished conference table, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped his presentation remote. The PowerPoint slide behind him displayed a bold title: Revolutionary Supply Chain Optimization Through AI Integration. The laughter had started the moment he'd introduced himself as just the intern and suggested that his project could save Meridian Industries millions of dollars annually. "An intern thinks he can revolutionize our entire supply chain," whispered one executive to another, not bothering to lower his voice. Marcus felt the familiar burn of exclusion wash over him, the same feeling he'd carried since childhood, growing up as one of the few black students in his suburban school district. But today, in this glass-walled boardroom overlooking downtown Seattle, something was different. Today, he had data that would silence every skeptic in the room. The morning rain drummed against the floor-to-ceiling windows as Marcus cleared his throat. CEO William Hartwell sat at the far end of the table, his steel-grey eyes fixed on his phone screen rather than the presentation. The other board members, all seasoned executives in expensive suits, exchanged knowing glances. To them, Marcus was just another diversity hire, a college kid playing dress-up in his father's borrowed tie. "Mr. Thompson," interrupted CFO Patricia Blackwood, her voice dripping with condescension, "while we appreciate your enthusiasm, perhaps you should focus on learning how real businesses operate before proposing such dramatic changes." More chuckles rippled through the room. Marcus felt his cheeks burn, but he pressed on. "I understand your skepticism," Marcus replied, his voice steadier than he felt, "but I've spent the past 6 months analyzing our current supply chain inefficiencies. We're hemorrhaging money due to outdated forecasting models and redundant inventory systems." He clicked to his next slide, revealing a complex flowchart that had taken him countless late nights to perfect. The dismissive laughter gradually faded as Marcus began walking them through his analysis. His presentation wasn't just theoretical. It was built on real data he'd painstakingly gathered from every department in the company. He'd interviewed warehouse workers, analyzed shipping manifests, and identified patterns that the company's expensive consulting firms had somehow missed. 3 months earlier, Marcus had started his internship with nothing but determination and a computer science degree from a state university his family had sacrificed everything to help him afford. While other interns fetched coffee and made copies, Marcus had spent his lunch breaks in the warehouse, talking to employees about bottlenecks and inefficiencies. He'd noticed how certain products sat untouched for months, while others were constantly back-ordered, creating a cascade of problems that cost the company both money and customer satisfaction. The revelation had come during a late-night conversation with warehouse supervisor Elena Vasquez, a 20-year veteran who'd watched the company grow from a small regional distributor to a national powerhouse. "Nobody ever asks us what we think," she'd told Marcus as they walked through aisles of dusty inventory. "We see the problems every day, but the suits upstairs don't want to hear from people like us." That conversation had planted a seed that grew into Marcus's comprehensive analysis. He'd developed algorithms to predict demand patterns, identified suppliers that consistently delivered late, and calculated the exact cost of every inefficiency in the system. More importantly, he'd created a roadmap for improvement that could be implemented immediately. Now, standing before the board, Marcus felt the weight of Elena's words and the expectations of every worker who'd shared their insights with him. He clicked to a slide showing potential savings, numbers so significant that even Patricia Blackwood looked up from her notes. "According to my analysis," Marcus continued, his confidence growing with each word, "implementing these changes could reduce inventory costs by 37% while improving delivery times by an average of 4 days. That translates to approximately $12.8 million in annual savings." The room's atmosphere shifted perceptibly. Board member Thomas Chen leaned forward, his expression no longer dismissive. "These projections," he said slowly, "you're certain of these numbers?" Marcus nodded, clicking to a detailed breakdown that showed his methodology. "I've verified every calculation multiple times. I also ran pilot tests on 3 product lines over the past month with Elena Vasquez's help. The results exceeded even my most optimistic projections." CEO Hartwell finally looked up from his phone, his sharp eyes focusing on the young intern for the first time. "You conducted unauthorized tests on our operations?" The question hung in the air like a threat. Marcus felt the familiar knot of anxiety in his stomach, the same feeling he'd experienced countless times when authority figures questioned his right to be in certain spaces. But this time, he had something more powerful than hope. He had proof. "I worked within my authorized access levels," Marcus replied carefully. "Elena supervised all activities, and I documented everything according to company protocols. The improvements were so obvious that the warehouse team began implementing some changes naturally." Patricia Blackwood shuffled through her papers, clearly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. "Mr. Thompson, even if your analysis is correct, implementation of this scale would require significant capital investment and operational disruption." "Actually," Marcus said, clicking to his implementation timeline, "the beauty of this approach is its modularity. We can roll out changes gradually, starting with the highest impact, lowest cost improvements. The initial investment is minimal, mostly software upgrades and staff training. The system pays for itself within the first quarter." The presentation continued for another 20 minutes, with Marcus fielding increasingly sophisticated questions from board members who had gone from dismissive to genuinely intrigued. His preparation showed as he provided detailed answers to every query, backed by data and real-world examples from his warehouse observations. When Marcus clicked to his final slide, a simple "thank you" against a clean white background, the room fell silent again. But this silence was different from the mocking quiet that had greeted him. This was the silence of minds being changed. CEO Hartwell was the first to speak. "Mr. Thompson, this is impressive work. How long did you say you've been with the company?" 6 months, sir. This is my 2nd semester internship. "And you developed all of this independently?" Marcus hesitated. The truth was more complex than a simple yes or no. "I had help from many people, sir. Elena Vasquez in the warehouse, Jake Peterson in shipping, Maria Santos in procurement. They all shared their expertise. My role was to analyze and synthesize their insights into a coherent strategy." Something flickered in Hartwell's eyes, perhaps respect for Marcus's honesty in sharing credit. "Patricia, I want a full review of this proposal by end of week. Thomas, arrange for Mr. Thompson to present this to our operational team." Patricia Blackwood's face had gone pale. As CFO, she'd been pushing for the hiring of McKinsey & Company to conduct a supply chain analysis, a project with a proposed budget of $2 million. Now, an intern had essentially delivered the same analysis for free, and his recommendations were more actionable than anything the expensive consultants had ever produced. "Sir," she interjected, "perhaps we should have our consulting partners review Mr. Thompson's work before—" "No," Hartwell's voice was firm. "I want our people to evaluate this internally first. Mr. Thompson, are you available to meet with our operational team tomorrow?" Marcus nodded, trying to keep his composure as adrenaline surged through his system. "Yes, sir. I've prepared supplementary materials for each department." As the board members began filing out of the room, Thomas Chen approached Marcus. "That was exceptional work, young man. How did you learn to analyze supply chains like this?" "Honestly, sir, I just listened to the people who work with these systems every day. They know where the problems are. They just needed someone to help document solutions." Chen smiled, extending his hand for a shake. "That's wisdom beyond your years. Most consultants we hire never think to ask the workers what they think. After the last board member left, Marcus stood alone in the now empty boardroom, looking out at the Seattle skyline through the rain-streaked windows. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "How did it go, baby?" He smiled, typing back, "I think they heard me." The following weeks transformed Marcus's internship experience completely. What had started as a presentation met with laughter became the foundation for the most significant operational overhaul in Meridian Industries' history. Elena Vasquez was promoted to Director of Warehouse Operations, Jake Peterson became the new Logistics Coordinator, and Maria Santos was named Supplier Relations Manager, all roles created specifically to implement Marcus's recommendations. The changes began immediately. New forecasting algorithms reduced excess inventory by 42% within the first month. Supplier relationships were restructured based on performance data Marcus had compiled, eliminating chronic delays. The warehouse layout was reorganized using efficiency principles Marcus had learned from Elena's decades of experience. But the most significant change was cultural. CEO Hartwell implemented monthly innovation sessions where employees at every level could present ideas for improvement. The first session drew over 200 participants, with ideas ranging from energy-saving initiatives to customer service improvements. "You didn't just analyze our supply chain," Hartwell told Marcus during a one-on-one meeting 6 weeks after the presentation. "You reminded us that our best insights often come from the people closest to the work." Patricia Blackwood, meanwhile, found herself in an increasingly uncomfortable position. The success of Marcus's initiatives highlighted years of expensive consulting projects that had delivered minimal results. Her resistance to the intern's ideas looked less like due diligence and more like professional jealousy. The situation reached a breaking point during a quarterly review meeting. Marcus presented updated numbers showing even greater savings than originally projected. The company was now on track to save over $15 million annually. When Patricia questioned the sustainability of these improvements, Elena Vasquez spoke up from her new position at the management table. "Ma'am, with respect," Elena said, her voice carrying the authority of 2 decades of experience, "these changes work because they address real problems we've been dealing with for years. Marcus didn't just give us theory. He gave us solutions that make our jobs easier and the company more profitable." The room's dynamics had shifted completely from that first presentation. Now, Marcus sat at the table as a valued team member, no longer the outsider looking in. His ideas were not just heard, but implemented. His insights sought by senior executives who had once dismissed him as just the intern. 3 months after his presentation, Marcus received an offer that would change his life. A full-time position as Director of Operational Innovation, reporting directly to the CEO. The salary was more than his parents had ever earned combined, but more importantly, the role came with the authority to continue the transformation he'd begun. On his last day as an intern, Marcus walked through the warehouse one final time with Elena. The space looked dramatically different. More organized, more efficient, but also more alive with purpose. Workers moved with the confidence of people whose expertise was valued, whose voices were heard. "You know what you really did here?" Elena asked as they watched the evening shift preparing for another smooth operation. "You proved that good ideas can come from anywhere, and that listening to people is more valuable than any consultant report." Marcus nodded, thinking about the journey from that first day when he'd introduced himself as just the intern. The laughter in the boardroom seemed like a lifetime ago, replaced by the steady hum of a company that had learned to value insight over assumptions, substance over status. As he prepared to start his new role, Marcus reflected on the lesson that had made everything possible. True innovation comes not from rejecting the system, but from listening to the people within it who see possibilities others miss. His presentation hadn't just saved the company millions of dollars, it had opened minds and changed a corporate culture that had been closed to voices like his for too long. The transformation at Meridian Industries became a case study in business schools across the country. But for Marcus, the real victory was simpler. He had earned his place at the table not by conforming to expectations, but by exceeding them in ways no one had anticipated. If this story of unexpected triumph and the power of listening resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear about the importance of valuing every voice in the workplace. Your support helps us continue bringing you these inspiring stories of people who changed the game by refusing to be underestimated.